Hey there, everybody. We're here at Kansas Smitty's. It's the night of our highly anticipated gig playing the music of Ahmad Jamal. And the name Ahmad Jamal can't be said, the music of Ahmad Jamal can't be said without also mentioning the names of Vernel Fournier and Israel Crosby, his bandmates in one of the most fruitful periods of his career. And here today to discuss this music with me, I'm so honored and humbled to be joined by my friend Jason Brown. Welcome,
Thanks,
Jason.
Man. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure's all mine, man. It's great to talk about music anytime, you know.
Yeah. And you know, I said it to you before, and I have to say it to everybody out there as well, that there's a little video that you made in London that you probably didn't think much of. That
I did not.
You know, it was about five years ago, and you took us all to school on Vernel's beat on Poinciana.
Oh wow, yeah.
And I loved the way that you broke it down. And for the people that maybe haven't seen that video, maybe you can just talk a little bit about how you found that music and why that beat in particular was this window for you onto, you know, the music of Vernel and Ahmad and Israel.
Man, you know, we were talking about this earlier, and about how Ahmad Jamal, some kind of way, is, you know, for as popular as he is kind of an unsung, you know, understated musician inside of our community. And a lot of us kind of get introduced to him and are surprised at how we could never have known about him before. And the same thing happened to me as well. I became familiar with him and his music when a singer came to the university I was at to give a master class, and she mentioned the rhythm of the song we're talking about, Poinciana, to which none of us knew it was happening. And then, of course, we all became engrossed in this record after she left. And as you well know, in your pursuit of a career, you know, a lot of things you learn early, you keep coming back to. And this record, Live at the Pershing, is that kind of record. You just keep going back to it. And especially at the beginning of my career, I played a lot of, you know, quiet trios and kind of cocktail gigs, so I always had to play brushes. So that was something I referenced a lot, that album, and the different ways that Vernel Fournier colored the music without necessarily using traditional combinations, like using a brush and a mallet or using brushes in unconventional ways. And of course, Poinciana, you know, everyone's always, you know, and as you go on in your career, people start asking, they say, well, how about a Poinciana beat? You know, so you're kind of refining and refining. And then one day I was walking around Soho, actually, and listening, and I realized that there was no one rhythm that Vernel Fournier played on this song. For example, typically when someone says play a Poinciana beat or groove, you know, the drummer will invariably end up doing something like this, you know. Something to that effect, you know, which is solid. That's a solid interpretation. But what he actually plays is so much more intricate. And what I found was that what Poinciana really ends up being is the most unassuming drum feature ever. Right. Because the pattern that the drums plays through each of the sections is different, but marks the feel of each moment, you know. And I couldn't believe it. I said, well, man, how did I never notice this? So I rewound it, and then rewound it again, and then sort of breaking them down by section. And I was floored that I couldn't believe I had equated just this simple idea of to being the entirety of that song when there was so much more. And it's actually the first thing he plays. So it's not really like, you know, you don't have to dig deep to get that part. And I just felt it was something I had to share, because it's kind of one of those moments where it's like, how did I never realize the sky was blue? So let me tell everyone, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm going to ask you to give us, like, you know, the Reader's Digest version, because I want to talk about a few other grooves on the record as well. But I just want to make a point, you know, to pick up on what you said, that you know, that Ahmad is one of the unsung, you know, heroes of jazz already. But in a way, you know, the way you talk about Vernel, do you think it's accurate to say that in a way, just like Train and Elvin and, you know, all these, you know, Bill Evans and Paul Motion, it's like, well, these two guys were actually made for each other, right? Do you think so?
I would agree. I mean, well, I analyze it from the perspective of, let's look at Vernel's choices after that particular band was disbanded. And the first drummer he uses after Vernel Fournier is a drummer named Frank Gant, who is not from New Orleans, but he has a Caribbean background. And I'll say that to say that there's a close connection between the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean and that area, and New Orleans being a port town where there's always been lots of traffic and flow of different peoples coming by. So that influence makes sense to me, that Caribbean nature. But then the next drummer that I'm aware of, I'm sure you use many drummers going through, but the next major one is Vernel Fournier. I mean, sorry, not Vernel Fournier, is Herlin Riley.
Herlin Riley,
who's
which
also
is,
from New Orleans.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's kind of, you could kind of say, you could kind of say that if you want to, that Ahmad's bag is he likes having that kind of beat, that New Orleans kind of influence in his music. Yeah. So yes, definitely they're a match made in heaven, and I think that Vernel's sensibilities as a musician from New Orleans actively affected the choices that he had in that band. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Do you think you could just briefly go through it's like what 4 or 5 permutations of the Poinciana beat?
Yeah.
Maybe give us 3 or so to kind of build it up. If you don't mind.
No. I actually brought my notes from
then
5 years ago.
By all means, please.
I'm always writing stuff
dig
down,
into that,
and I'm so glad that I did in this case because I completely forgot all these beats. But yeah. Well, the idea here is that this showcases the origins of where Vernel Fournier is from in New Orleans and well, actually, I'm not sure if he's from New Orleans or he might have been from one of the neighboring cities. But all those cities are, very much in the tradition of a second line tradition, which is a rhythm unique to New Orleans. And
can you just demonstrate that kind of what second line comes from the parade bands. It comes from this syncopated fourth beat. It's different from a marching rhythm, and all you have to do is go to New Orleans and breathe the air, and you start to hear why that beat came about. But maybe you can show us where he was coming from.
Absolutely. So the crux of the rhythm is, like you said, it's a kind of a variation of a marching beat, and so I'll kind of play an evolution from like a standard march into a second line, and then I can show you how Vernel takes that and applies it to the trio setting. So the main idea, the most important idea, is this kind of heavy weight on beat 4, which kind of outlines the entire rhythm. And why that's important, because that's the anchor of the beat. So first, a regular march would be something like, something like that, right? And so where the New Orleans beat changes it is that they put the syncopated beat on the 2s and 4s, so it becomes, instead of being heavy 1, it becomes. Right, so that last beat, now to expand upon that, you just add a few syncopations but land on that 4th beat, and it becomes something like. Right, so that kind of idea, where you're leading a melody from the bass drum. So what Vernel Fournier did is he took that pattern and he applied it to this drum, which is the floor tom. And then the other colors around it he applied to this drum, the snare drum, with the snares off, so a tenor drum sound. And then he replicates this kind of cymbal splash sound by playing his left hand on one cymbal. And the reason he does that is because typically a second line band is made up in a marching configuration. So it's one snare drummer, one bass drummer. So it's typically you would have some guy playing on a bass drum with the little cymbal on the side, something like. Right? So what he does, it's a trio, it's a very quiet club, he plays mallets. And he comes up with a very creative beat. So I'll just give you a quick rundown. Like you said, 2. So something like the initial beat, the one that everyone knows, that everyone copies, starts like this. 2, 3, 4. Sorry. So notice the 4. All right, so that's leading the whole thing. Right, and as he progresses, he follows a litany of variations on this kind of idea. So the first variation being, let me just double check. Right, okay. So 2, 3, 4. So no, it's right here. 2. Right, always that 4 is leading the charge. The next variation would be. So on and so forth. So eventually,
he hasn't even touched the ride cymbal yet.
Well, yeah,
No,
well, it comes up on top, but he'll never play like a ride pattern. It'll always just be this light, just letting the groove flow like that, which again is reminiscent of the bass drummer doing
So in a sense, he's doing the work of kind of 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, at once, and again leading the band.
And
so
no
every
overtime.
Every change signals the next change to another section. And that was the genius of it, is that just kind of applying all those concepts. And then you find that all through Ahmad's music, that kind of feeling, that beat 4 hit, that kind of syncopated rhythm is all throughout his music. So, it was just something I felt was important to put out there because it's easy to miss,
Yeah. Absolutely. So, that is one of the defining moments of that record for sure.
Absolutely.
But there are a few other things there are a lot of other things that Vernell does, throughout the lifespan of that trio that are mind blowing, and one of his things is his brushwork.
Yes,
right?
Indeed.
And I wanted to just ask you about, there's a few different grooves he plays, but could you just kind of touch on some of the brushwork concepts that you've heard him innovate on?
Well, again, it's New Orleans. I have to say before I go any further, I consider to be New Orleans like, a mecca for this music because it's the origin space of it, firstly, but the rhythms that are there. I mean, it's the perfect melting pot. It was a port city. It's the only American naval base. It was a red light district. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of people mixing around, and so there's a lot of secular rhythms that New Orleans has that are unique only to New Orleans. And so what Vernell constantly does is he adapts those rhythms to kind of fit in whatever the mood is around. So one thing people like that he does is kind of his variations on what might be a Beguine or rumba feels. So something where he'll apply an idea like this, but he'll embellish it. So the idea simply will be. So he might embellish that by doing something like this. Right? Or maybe reverse it, do something like this. Or one of his most famous kind of moments is where he does like an extended kind of phrase that goes over many bar lines. So the idea being this. So that kind of idea.
That's beautiful, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, it's not mine, So.
It's yours. It's yours. It is yours. And that's just. So I wanted to just. I mean, when that's like the beginning of I'm Old Fashioned, right? He's doing like. Or maybe he's on the hi-hat for that. But
Yeah, Woody and You is what I was thinking of.
Woody and You, yeah. Of course.
But no, they use it constantly, man. I mean, it's archetypal what he did in those records,
So I got another one for you that I want to ask about, and it's not one that we've spoken about before, but I'm sure you have it in your head, and I wonder if it conjures any thoughts. But
I'm curious.
What's new, right?
Oh man!
In the middle of What's New, right? There's this vamp.
Yep. Yeah.
What is that? How did they come up with that? Or what do you hear in that when you, as a drummer, do you hear that? What is he doing there?
I mean, I hear, the sad part about when you start to codify a music is that, especially if you don't get the insights of the people who were playing the music, your archetypes, you start to create conditions and situations or leave out conditions and situations without realizing their importance. And, for a rhythm like that, I think they were just trying to do something different. Right. You know what I mean? But inadvertently, I feel like you could make the argument that they created the modern pop beat.
Well, yeah,
in
I mean,
moment.
you hear that, and that's hip hop right there.
Yeah,
It's like
the whole concept.
all of the '90s, like write it off. You know?
And so, I mean, next to Poinciana, I have to say that's probably the biggest shocker on that record for me. The record live with the Pershing was What's New in that rhythm. The rhythm being that we're talking about is that it's a kind of a standard ballad at the beginning, and then it goes into this kind of beat, if you will. Like an example being like.
This is at the top.
Like that kind of vibe, right? And so like it's crazy. You're like, wow, why do they do this? Why? I can't give you a why except to just change the vibe. But if you could take anything away from that, there's what he's playing on the brushes is something that's come up a lot with some of the older musicians I've played with, and this kind of very tight beat. So like the idea of, as opposed to being 1, 2, 3, 4, being 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
So it's an accelerated skip beat.
Yes, but the idea of elongating the beat. Right. So check it out. Like that's a very kind of dry way of playing. If you would play it more how I normally would, it be like. Right, so it creates the illusion of the super elongated space.
It's almost like the long third beat in a Viennese waltz. Man.
Exactly.
It's like,
and then, as a soloist, you have way more freedom because then you can play on both, the double time, the quadruple time, and feel like you have space to play in the kind of triplet time. And I think that's what really sets off that moment. You have those kind of, this new feel, but it kind of has that very like, like that thing in there. So that's what I really took away that I thought was really special. I never really heard anyone do that.
No, right. That's wonderful, man. Yeah, thanks. So I have one more question, and then we'll wrap, and we'll have some dinner before this gig.
Right.
But
let's do it.
But okay. So Vernel is a big deal in that trio, and he's highly influential in terms of this innovation. But I want to ask you, as a drummer, when you hear him play, he doesn't comp like other drummers. I mean, obviously he's playing in Ahmad's group, and Ahmad doesn't play like other piano players.
Exactly.
But in terms of comping, do you hear him use any devices that you can relate to any other drummers, or how do you kind of perceive his comping concept?
Oof, man, that's a really tough question. I've been working in a piano trio for the last 2 years with the pianist Monty Alexander, and I've got to learn a lot about trio playing as far as what not to play. And it brings up a talk I used to have with Billy Hart a lot, my mentor and a great drummer. And he used to say that, people can hear you playing, people can hear when you wanted to play something but didn't. You know what I mean? And that always used to sound so weird to me. I was like, what is that? What is he talking about? But the reverse is also true. People can kind of hear when you want your nothing to sound like something, if that makes sense. So the idea kind of being that if, when I was younger, I would always want to outline everything, but sometimes you can just think about outlining it without outlining it and you get the same effect, especially in an intimate setting like a trio where sometimes you're thinking as a drummer, if there's a great line and something like, like you want to do that too. Yeah. But like there's a bass and a piano. Like, how about you just go and let them play it, then everyone can hear that. It's obviously a feature for dexterity and speed, so let the feature be where people can see it. They don't have to see me playing this and hear me cluttering it up, And I think that's what I take away from Vernel, is I hear that the older I get, the more I listen, the more I hear the things he doesn't play and why he doesn't play them. Yeah. You know what I mean? That would be the thing. And that's generally a trio drummer thing in general. People often think, well, they don't play as much, or they don't play. It's not that. It's that, sometimes you're just waiting. There was a hit I just listened to in preparation for this gig, end of a ballad, and it's something like, Ahmad says, da-da-da-da-da, 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 da. Right, so right. You could play da 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 But it's the idea that this is the orchestration, that this is the highest note, this is the next lowest note, this is the penultimate note, pay attention, now we're done.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And that's what he was great at, that kind of orchestration. So that's what I'd look at his comping as, you know?
Right. I love that. So it's not trying to catch each little hot lick here and there. It's like about the piece of music overall.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, definitely, definitely. Because if you leave out that hot lick, then it creates anticipation for what's the next thing you're gonna play together or not play together, or what do you know, that kind of thing. It takes a, you know, it's the maturity and the preparation for the excitement that his comping kind of brings out. You know, like you're waiting, what's this thing? And then it like knocks you over the head because of how powerful it is and how unexpected it is, you know?
Jason, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Wonderful. I can't wait for the gig tonight.
Me neither.
For those of you out there who watch this video, you may see it after the fact. You probably will see it after the fact. Check out Kansas Smitty's. Join our Patreon. You can watch all of our sets, our archive of sets if you join the Patreon at the top tier. Watch our concerts and get involved. If you want to check the studio audience link in our Instagram, you can come be here in a very socially distanced and safe room and check out gigs like we're going to have tonight. So big thank you to Jason.
Thanks for having me, man.
And we'll see you again soon. Thank you.